I'm Ava Miller, and before you hear anything else, understand this. My father told the entire family I was living in a trailer park and struggling, and they believed him. They laughed when I invited them to Christmas dinner. We're not eating in a trailer. That was the moment I decided they would choke on their own assumptions. If you have ever been lied about, minimized, or humiliated by your own blood, tell me in the comments. And if your family has ever rewritten your life to make themselves look better, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Stay with me until the end, because the ending is the part they still pretend never happened. I found out about the trailer park rumor on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning where everything feels too normal for disaster to hit. I was standing in line at a coffee shop, scrolling my phone, half listening to the hiss of the espresso machine. Then I heard my name from behind. Ava, can I ask you something? It was Jenna, a woman I barely knew from work. Polite smiles in hallways, nothing more. She looked uncomfortable, like she was about to confess to a crime. I said, "Sure, what's going on?" She hesitated. "Your dad. He was at my cousin's barbecue last week." My stomach tightened. My father's stories were always weapons. What did he say? She exhaled, shoulders collapsing in sympathy I didn't ask for. He told everyone you're having a hard time. He said you're living in some rundown trailer park, that you're struggling to make ends meet. He made it sound like he's worried about you. Worried. The word hit like acid. I didn't react. I didn't blink. I just stood there, frozen in the middle of a Starbucks, smelling burnt coffee and betrayal. For a moment, I wondered if she could hear my heartbeat, even and cold, like metal cooling after a weld. I forced out, "He said that?" She winced. "Yeah. Everyone was talking about how strong he is for supporting you emotionally. I didn't know if it was true, so I just wanted to check." Check. Not verify. Check. Because the idea of me falling apart fit a story they'd always preferred. I had been quiet too long. I finally said, "I'm fine. I don't live in a trailer. But thank you for telling me." She nodded quickly, relieved. "Of course. I just thought you should know." When she left, I stood there gripping my coffee so tightly the lid buckled. I felt the heat seep through the cup, burning my palm, and still I didn't let go. Because the truth was simple. My father didn't slip up. He didn't misspeak. He crafted a narrative. He liked imagining me small, weak, pitiful. It made him feel large. I walked out of the shop, got into my car, and sat with the engine off, staring at the steering wheel. The lie hadn't even surprised me. Not really. What shocked me was how easily everyone believed it. They never once questioned whether Ava, the daughter who had always taken care of herself, could have built something better. I drove home in silence. Home. A $4.2 million estate tucked behind iron gates and a winding driveway lined with cypress trees. A home I purchased myself. A home no one in my family had ever seen because I didn't want them touching the walls with their poison. I pulled in, parked, and sat in the driveway. The house loomed above me. Stone, glass, steel. Everything they told me I would never have. Everything I was never supposed to reach. And still, somehow, in their version of my life, I was living in a sun-rotted trailer parked beside a dumpster. I walked inside, letting the door close behind me with a heavy click that echoed through the entry hall. The silence felt sacred. This house was the first place in my life that didn't demand I shrink. Then my phone buzzed. A family group chat notification. I almost ignored it, until I saw the words, "Dad, we need to plan Christmas dinner. Since Ava has limited space, maybe she can bring something instead of hosting." Limited space. I stared at the screen, heat prickling up the back of my neck. My sister chimed in. "Sister, is her place even big enough for a table? Last time I saw her, she was still scraping by." Then, Aunt. "Well, she invited us last year and canceled, probably because she didn't have room for everyone." They were laughing at a life that didn't exist. mocking a struggle they invented, enjoying the fiction more than the truth. I didn't respond. Not yet. I set my phone down and walked through the house, through the foyer, through the living room with 20-foot ceilings, through the kitchen with marble counters. Each step sharpened something inside me. A line, a boundary, a blade. Let them talk. Let them laugh. Let them choke on the story they built. Because when Christmas came and they saw the truth, they wouldn't be laughing, and I wouldn't be opening the door. I didn't answer the group chat for hours. I let the notifications pile up like trash at a curb. Visible, rotting, ignored. I cooked dinner, washed dishes, lit a candle in the kitchen. I moved through my house like a ghost who owned everything but owed nothing. The phone buzzed again. Sister. Ava, hello? Can you host or not? Dad. She's probably busy. People in her situation have to work extra shifts. In her situation. I almost laughed. They spoke about me like I was a charity case they took turns feeling superior to. I picked up my phone but didn't type. Not yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go. And they didn't disappoint. Aunt Lisa. If we're doing Christmas at her place, someone bring folding chairs. I doubt she has enough. Cousin Megan. Should we do it outside? Maybe she doesn't have a table? Then, sister. Do we need bug spray? I heard trailer parks have. She sent a bug emoji. Little antennae. Crawling. Cute to her. Infuriating to me. I put the phone down, walked to the living room window and stared at the front lawn. Glowing under landscape lighting. Perfect. Manicured. A place that took work, discipline, sacrifice. A home I carved out of bone-deep loneliness and years of grinding. And they were joking about a trailer park. I returned to the phone and scrolled through more of their messages. Dad. We'll just make the best of it. Christmas is about family, not where we eat. I felt my jaw tighten. The same man who couldn't be bothered to show up at my high school graduation was suddenly a martyr for family unity. More messages rolled in. Aunt. We love you, Ava. Don't worry if your place is small. We'll manage. We'll manage. Like hosting them was a burden on them. Then a message from my mother. Short, sharp, dripping with superiority. Mom. If we do it at Ava's place, everyone should bring something. Her budget is limited. My fingers curled so tightly around the phone I heard a faint crack in the case. Limited. Budget. Trailer. Bugs. Chairs. They had built an entire fictional universe where I was barely surviving, and they were the benevolent saviors. I closed my eyes and inhaled slowly. In through the nose. Out through the rage. Then I opened the chat. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Not yet, I thought. Let them keep talking. Because the more they revealed, the easier it would be to let them burn in their own arrogance. A new message came in. Dad. Ava, honey, say something. We don't want you to feel pressured. We know things are tight. 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 I typed one word. I'll host. Before they could respond, I continued. Christmas dinner. My house. I'll send the address. The chat exploded instantly. Sister. Wait. Your house? Aunt. Are you sure? We don't want to overwhelm you. Mom. Is it safe for all of us to fit in there? Safe. Like my home was some structural hazard held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. Dad typed, We appreciate you stepping up, sweetheart. We know it's a lot for you. A lot. For me. A woman with a 3-car garage, heated floors, and a balcony overlooking a private orchard. I pressed my lips together and stared at the screen. They weren't just wrong. They were confident in their wrongness. Comfortable, entertained by it. And I realized something brutal. It wasn't about where I lived. It was about who they needed me to be. The failure, the disappointment, the proof that their cruelty was justified. I typed again. Address incoming. Before they replied, I pasted it. 1548 Larkridge Crescent. Send. The message hung in the chat like a grenade with the pin pulled. The typing bubbles appeared immediately. Sister. This. This says it's in the hills. Aunt. No, that has to be a mistake. Mom. Ava, whose address is this? Dad waited longer, and when he finally responded, the words were dipped in suspicion. Is this where you work? Work. Not live, not own, just some place where he imagined I swept floors or scrubbed counters. I didn't answer. Not a single word. Silence was my scalpel. Let them drive there. Let them see. Let the gates and stone pillars do the speaking I no longer cared to do. I locked my phone, set it on the counter, and stood very still. I felt calm, sharp, ready. Christmas was in 3 days, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for their judgment. I was preparing their reckoning. I spent the morning of Christmas Day in absolute silence. No music, no cooking, no decorating, nothing that suggested warmth or welcome. My house was immaculate, sterile almost, marble counters polished, glass railings clear enough to vanish, every room staged like a photograph. Not for guests, for witnesses. I wasn't preparing to host a family dinner. I was preparing to expose a lie. At 4:12 p.m., my security system chimed. Driveway gate, motion detected. I tapped the camera feed. There they were. My parents' SUV rolled slowly up the hill, its headlights cutting through the dusk like searchlights. Behind it, a line of cars. My sister's white sedan, my aunt's minivan, my cousin's Jeep. One after another, they crawled toward my estate like ants approaching the wrong picnic. I zoomed the camera. My father was squinting at the keypad station, leaning out his window, confused. He typed something, waited, typed again, shook his head. Then, faintly through the intercom microphone, I heard him mumble, "Why would she give us the wrong address?" My lips curled. The address was correct. It was their expectations that were wrong. After a minute of fumbling, he pressed the call button. "Ava, are you there? We're at... well, we're here. Open the gate?" I didn't move. I stayed seated in my living room, legs crossed, watching from my phone as the cold crawled into their coats and the doubt crawled into their expressions. My sister's car pulled up beside theirs. She got out, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. Her face twisted in confusion as she looked at the towering stone pillars, the wrought iron gates, the sprawling grounds behind them. "Mom," she said, "this cannot be Ava's place." My mother rolled down her window, examining the estate with narrowed eyes, like she was inspecting something forged illegally or stolen. "She must be house-sitting," Mom said. Her voice had the brittle edge of someone already scrambling for excuses. Then my aunt's minivan arrived. The sliding door opened and she stepped out, mouth falling open as she stared at the fountain in the circular drive. Is that a waterfall?" she whispered. I leaned closer to my phone. Yes, it was. And no, she didn't deserve to stand near it. They gathered near the gate. Coats pulled tight, breath fogging in the air. I could hear fragments of conversation through the intercom microphone. My sister. "Maybe she sent us the wrong address on purpose." My aunt. "Or her GPS glitched. Ava gets lost easily." My cousin. "I don't think she lives here. This neighborhood is..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Rich. Exclusive. Everything they insisted I couldn't achieve. Dad stepped out of the SUV, rubbing his hands together, irritation leaking from every movement. "She should have been waiting at the gate," he said. "People who don't know how to host always do this." My mother pinched the bridge of her nose. "Just call her again." He dialed. My phone buzzed on the couch beside me. I didn't touch it. He tried again, and again. Each ring poured gasoline on the tension outside. Mom was growing impatient. "This is ridiculous. She invited us. Why isn't she at the door?" My sister stared through the bars. "Look inside. Those are real chandeliers." "No way," Dad muttered. "This has to be a mistake." His denial was a warm knife sliding perfectly between my ribs, not because it hurt, but because I had waited years to hear it crack. They huddled near the keypad, whispering frantically. "We're making fools of ourselves," Mom snapped. "We look insane sitting here like we're trying to break in." My aunt whispered, "What if she does live here?" That line hit them harder than ice. "Sister, then why didn't she tell us?" Mom, "Exactly. Why hide it?" Dad, "Because she's difficult. She's always been difficult." I choked on a laugh. Difficult. Not private. Not protective of her peace. Just difficult. Because I didn't perform the misery they preferred. Another car pulled up behind them. A neighbor. Slowing to see the spectacle at my gate. Shame shot through their group like a ripple of electricity. Sister hissed, "Oh my God, people are watching." Aunt, "We look ridiculous." Dad, "Stop panicking. We just need her to open the gate." I leaned back against the couch, watching them through the camera like they were actors in a play I finally got to direct. Let them wait. Let the cold bite them. Let the truth tower over them in stone and steel. Tonight wasn't about dinner. Tonight was about revelation, and they weren't ready for any of it. They finally got through the gate after a neighbor, confused by the traffic, used their remote to open it so they could drive past. I didn't buzz them in. I didn't plan to. They followed the curve of the driveway slowly, headlights sweeping across the stone facade of the estate, like they were searching for the trick, the illusion, the crack in the scenery that would prove it wasn't mine. Their cars rolled to a stop. Doors slammed. Voices climbed. Boots scraped across the paved walkway as they approached my front door. This towering slab of mahogany framed by glass panels and ironwork. A door designed to make people feel small. I watched them gather at it through my foyer camera feed. My mother was the first to step forward, brushing invisible lint off her coat like she was preparing to walk onto a stage. She lifted her hand and knocked. 3 confident, entitled taps, the kind that assumed immediate obedience. I didn't move. Inside, the house remained quiet. Still. Cold in its perfection. She knocked again, harder this time. "Ava!" she called, her voice sugary and sharp at once. "Honey, we're here." I sat on the couch, phone in hand, watching her on my screen, watching her shift from annoyed to confused when nothing happened. My sister stepped beside her, rubbing her arms. "Maybe she's in the bathroom." My father scoffed. "For 15 minutes?" He hit the doorbell repeatedly. The chime echoed through the house like a taunt, soft, melodic, mocking. I didn't stand. I didn't breathe deeply. I just watched. They were so small from this view. Mom knocked again. Harder. Then again. "Ava, can you hear us? Open the door." Dad tried the handle like he was testing whether I might have left it unlocked by accident. When it didn't budge, he muttered, "She must be doing this on purpose." Oh, I was. Sister pulled out her phone and called me. The device buzzed on the coffee table beside me, vibrating against the marble like a trapped insect. I let it ring. Again. And again. "Why isn't she answering?" my sister said, her voice tightening. Aunt Lisa chimed in, peering into the side window. "It looks furnished. It looks lived in." Mom turned to her sharply. "Anyone can rent furniture." I almost smiled. Dad rapped hard on the door. "Ava, open up. This isn't funny." Funny. He used that word often, usually when belittling me, minimizing me, rewriting my life into a joke that made him look noble. He pounded again. The door didn't move. Neither did I. Minutes passed. Not 1. Not 5. 10. The cold settled on them like frostbite. Their breaths puffed out in heavy clouds. Their voices grew sharper, unraveling. Mom knocked with her fist now. "Ava, enough! Open the door and stop acting childish." My heart didn't clench. My throat didn't burn. There was no guilt. No hesitation. Just a quiet, rising clarity. Childish was letting them in. Strength was leaving the door shut. Sister started pacing. "Maybe she's not coming. Maybe she tricked us," Cousin Megan whispered. "Why would she do that?" A hollow laugh escaped Dad. "Out of spite. You know how she gets." As if I was the villain in the fiction he authored. He tried calling again. My phone buzzed. I watched the screen light up with his name. Decline. Buzz. Decline. Buzz. Decline. Mom pressed her forehead against the door, her voice low and urgent. Ava, sweetie. Please. It's freezing. Just let us in so we can talk. Talk. Like the decades of talking that ended in them laughing at an imaginary trailer I supposedly lived in. Talk, so they could rewrite this moment before it finished happening. I stayed seated. 5 more minutes passed. Their tone shifted from annoyance to humiliation. Sister kicked at the bottom step. Dad muttered curses. Aunt Lisa whispered, "People can see us from the street." Mom straightened, tugging her coat tight. "This is ridiculous." Dad hammered the door once more, a desperate, angry blow. Silence answered him. Finally, the knocking stopped. The doorbell stopped. The calls stopped. They stepped back. Defeated. Cold. Exposed. Dad muttered, "She'll regret this." No. They would. They turned toward the driveway, their shoes crunching the gravel, their silhouettes shrinking as they walked away from a house they refused to believe I could own. 20 minutes of knocking. 20 minutes of calling. 20 minutes of waiting for the kind of daughter I no longer was. And I didn't open the door once. They didn't leave right away. I knew they wouldn't. Humiliation makes people linger, makes them claw for a different ending. I watched them gather at the base of the steps, breath fogging in the cold air, lights from the estate cutting harsh shapes across their faces. My father was the first to break the silence. "This is unbelievable," he snapped, pulling his coat tighter. "She invites us, then pretends she's not home? Who does that?" My mother glared at the door like she could burn it down with her eyes. "She always does this. Always makes things dramatic." Dramatic. Yes. The word for refusing to open my own door after they spent years dragging my name through dirt was dramatic. I stayed exactly where I was, on my couch, watching them on my phone, the screen casting a cold light across the room. My sister kicked at a stray pebble on the walkway. I knew it. I knew she wasn't ready for this. She probably panicked. Aunt Lisa whispered, "But what about the house? What about the neighborhood? Why would she—" Dad cut her off sharply. "She doesn't live here, Lisa. Don't be stupid." My jaw tightened. Even when they stood at the literal doorstep of proof, they couldn't imagine me above them. They needed me beneath them. Mom's voice rose. "She could have at least come outside. We've been knocking for 20 minutes. Sister folded her arms. "She's embarrassed, obviously." "Embarrassed?" Dad barked out a scornful laugh. "If she lived here, she'd be showing it off. She wouldn't hide inside like a scared kid." I leaned back into the couch cushions, exhaling a laugh that tasted more like ashes. They were arguing with their own illusions, wrestling the fiction they created about me back into place, trying to force it to fit. Aunt Lisa stepped closer to the window, peering in. "I don't understand. Look at this place. Why would she rent something like this just to pretend?" Mom scoffed. "Please, you can rent anything if you want to impress people." I saw my sister's expression twist. Confusion, irritation, something sharper beneath. But why didn't she just tell us? Why hide it? Why make us think she was— Dad interrupted, voice cutting like a serrated knife. "Because she likes secrets. She always has. She can't communicate like an adult. She wants us to chase her." Chase me? They hadn't chased me a day in their lives. I'd spent years screaming into the void of their indifference. Sister's voice cracked. "Well, we look ridiculous standing out here. What are we supposed to tell people? That we got locked out of our own daughters?" She couldn't finish the sentence, not because the cold stopped her, because the words felt wrong in her mouth. My daughter's house. My sister's house. That would rearrange the hierarchy. Mom glanced toward the driveway, her voice dropping into panic. "People are walking their dogs. They can see us." Aunt Lisa added quickly, "I think someone filmed us." The humiliation finally hit them with weight. They shifted nervously, whispering. Dad's jaw clenched as he scanned the street. "This is her fault." he muttered. She's doing this to embarrass us. Embarrass them. That was the moment the truth clicked into place like a lock sliding shut. It was never about me. It was never about concern. It was never about family. It was about how they appeared standing at my door. I watched Mom rub her hands together angrily. We came all this way. The least she could do is face us. Face them? I had faced them my entire childhood. Every disappointment, every sharp comment disguised as concern, every time they made my struggles into entertainment. No, they could face the door. Sister paced again, her voice rising. We should just leave. This is pointless. No, Dad snapped. We are not leaving until she explains herself. It's freezing, Mom protested. My fingers are numb. Dad kicked at the step in frustration. We raised her better than this. That line made something inside me go still. They raised me? They raised me to expect nothing, to survive alone, to never rely on them. They raised me like a warning label. Here is what happens when you become inconvenient. Aunt Lisa finally stepped away from the door. I think she's not coming out. Mom nodded stiffly. Let's go to the car. At least we can warm up. But even then, they didn't leave. They stood by their vehicles, doors open, heaters blasting, arguing in frantic whispers they assumed I couldn't hear. Dad's voice cracked, not with sadness, but with wounded pride. She thinks she's too good for us. Mom snapped back. Maybe she is. Look at this place. Silence. Heavy. Devastating. For them. I watched from my couch as the truth split. Their voices open like glass under pressure. They weren't angry because I didn't open the door. They were angry because, for the first time, they realized I never needed to. They didn't drive away. Not yet. Shame is heavy, but denial is heavier. And they were still dragging it around like a corpse they refused to bury. I watched from the camera feed as they stood beside their cars in the circular driveway, the fountain lights casting ripples of gold across their faces. They thought they were far enough from the house that I couldn't hear them. They forgot the driveway cameras had audio. They forgot everything, really, except their need to rewrite the moment before it destroyed them. My father slammed his door shut but didn't get inside. He paced a tight circle, hands clenched. I can't believe she did this. I can't believe she would humiliate us like this. Us. He spoke like he was the wronged party. Like 20 minutes of knocking could outweigh years of silence I endured because of them. My mother leaned against the hood of the car, rubbing her arms for warmth, but not moving to get inside. You pushed her, she snapped at him. You're always pushing her. He stopped pacing. What is that supposed to mean? You shouldn't have told everyone she was struggling, Mom said, voice sharp, brittle. You shouldn't have made it sound like she was living in some rundown mess. Aunt Lisa shifted awkwardly beside them. Everyone heard it, Mark. You said it a dozen times. Dad's mouth twitched. I didn't say trailer park, I just said she was having a hard time. Sister scoffed. Dad, you literally said she was one step away from living in a camper. She threw her hands up, exasperated. And now she lives here. They all paused and looked back at the house. The massive windows, the stone pillars, the manicured trees, the life I built without their fingerprints smeared on the walls. Dad's voice lowered, the first crack of uncertainty bleeding through. If she really lives here, why didn't she tell us? Mom's laughter came out wrong, thin, strained. Because she didn't want us to know clearly, and I'm starting to understand why. Dad turned to her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? That maybe she didn't want us treating her like a bank the way you treat your own brother, Mom shot back. Or maybe she didn't want to hear you brag about how she's finally doing something right. Aunt Lisa looked between them nervously. Let's all calm down. The neighbors are literally watching. They were. One couple had stopped mid-walk, their dog sniffing the grass while they whispered behind gloved hands. My family bristled under the attention. Sister pulled her collar up around her neck. We look ridiculous. We're standing here like we're begging her to let us in. Dad's voice cracked again. Maybe she's lying. Maybe this is temporary. Maybe. Sister cut him off. Dad, look at that fountain. Look at the cars in the garage. Look at the security system. This isn't temporary. A beat of silence fell over them. Aunt Lisa spoke quietly. You told everyone she was struggling. Why? Dad inhaled sharply. Because she left. She cut us out. She made decisions without us. And she thought she could do everything alone. Mom's voice softened, not with kindness, but with something like self-pity. Maybe she could. Sister bristled. I just want to know why she didn't tell us she moved here. It's like she didn't trust us. I felt a heat spread through my chest. Not anger. Recognition. For the first time, she was asking the right question, and the answer was so obvious it was almost pathetic. Because you weren't safe. None of you were. Not with my achievements, not with my failures, not with my truth. Dad let out a frustrated breath and leaned against the SUV. If she's doing well, why freeze us out like this? Why make us look like fools? Mom straightened, crossing her arms. Maybe that's the part she learned from you. Sister flinched at that. Aunt Lisa looked away. Dad stared at the ground. Silence settled over them like frost. They had run out of illusions, out of excuses, out of people to blame except each other. Finally, one by one, they began getting into their cars. Doors shut. Engines ignited. Exhaust curled into the cold air. But my father lingered longest. He stood outside his door, staring at the house as if trying to force it to shrink into something that made sense. Something that fit his story. Something that made me small again. He whispered, barely audible to the microphone, "She doesn't need us." I swallowed hard, because it was the first true thing he had said about me in years. He got into the car and shut the door. Their headlights swept across the front of the house as they pulled away, disappearing down the long driveway like ghosts, who finally realized they weren't welcome among the living. And I watched quietly, motionless, finally understanding. They weren't leaving because I shut them out. They were leaving because the version of me they built died in my driveway tonight. When the last set of headlights disappeared down my driveway, the house fell into a silence so complete it felt carved out of stone. I set my phone on the coffee table and let the darkness settle. No movement, no noise. Just the quiet weight of a moment that had taken years to arrive. I stood slowly and walked toward the foyer. Not to open the door. Just to see it. The massive wooden slab loomed ahead of me, still and untouched. The same door they pounded on, shouted at, pleaded with. The same door that never bowed to them the way I once did. I stopped a few feet away, barefoot on the cold marble floor, arms crossed against my chest. The house felt larger now, almost, echoing with the absence of their voices. For a long breath, I simply stared at the door as if expecting it to speak. But what could it say? It had already delivered the message for me. I tapped my phone and replayed the last 30 minutes of footage. Their shouting, their arguing, their shame turning into something brittle and sour. I watched the clip of my father standing alone, staring up at my house like it was a monument built from a language he never learned to read. She doesn't need us. That sentence hung in the air long after the video ended. He said it like a revelation. To me, it was old news. I walked through the foyer and into the living room, letting my fingers glide across the back of the leather sofa. Every object in this house, the sculptures, the rugs, the lamps, the towering curtains, was something I chose for myself. Not for approval, not for applause, not for validation. My life had been quiet for a long time, quiet by design. But tonight, it felt different, sharper, clearer. Like silence had become a blade instead of a blanket. I sat on the couch, my legs folded beneath me, and stared at the dim glow of the security monitor on the wall. The driveway was empty now. The fountain still ran in steady, uninterrupted arcs. Nothing about the estate hinted at the chaos that had just unfolded at its gates. That was the thing about the truth. It didn't need to be loud to destroy someone. My phone buzzed. A new message. From my sister. Sister, We need to talk. I didn't open it. Another message. Mom, call me, now. No. Another. Dad, this isn't over. Oh, but it was. It had ended the moment they realized they weren't arriving to rescue me. They were arriving to confront the lie they created. I turned the phone face down and let it buzz against the table like a trapped insect. Each vibration muffled under the glass made the moment sweeter. Eventually, the buzzing stopped. Silence wrapped itself around the room again. I stood and walked toward the hallway, each step echoing in the vastness of the house. When I reached the dining room, the one with the 20-foot ceilings, the crystal chandelier, the walnut table that could seat 12, I paused. The table was empty. No place settings, no candles, no food. It looked exactly the way I wanted it to look. Untouched by people who only knew how to take. Most families celebrate Christmas with warm light and soft music. Mine spent it pounding on a door they thought was too heavy for me to ever own. I crossed the dining room, opened the double doors to the terrace, and stepped out into the cold air. The estate lay quiet around me. The rolling lawn, the dark outlines of trees, the distant hills washed in moonlight. A kingdom built not from privilege, but from solitude. A kingdom they were never meant to enter. I wrapped my arms around myself and let the cold settle on my skin. It felt honest, unforgiving, clean. Inside, my phone buzzed again. One final desperate attempt to drag me into the script they'd always written me into. I didn't rush to it. I didn't even turn. Instead, I whispered into the night. Not for them, but for myself. They wanted to eat in a trailer. I let them starve at the gates of a mansion. And then I stepped back inside, closed the terrace door behind me, and shut off the foyer lights, leaving the front door in complete darkness. A door I never opened. A door I never will.